Hey, it's been a while since I've done a video, so I thought I'd do one for the upcoming fight next Saturday between Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez for the WBO Light Welterweight Championship of the World. So I haven't really watched much fights back of these two. Whenever there's a fight coming up, I try to watch old fights of both guys. So I'm just going off what I think of these two as fighters. I might, over the next 2 weeks, if I get time, try to watch a few fights of these guys just to sort of refresh my memory. But as soon as this fight was announced, I was pretty confident in picking Shakur Stevenson, and probably because when we've seen Teofimo Lopez in his fights against guys who move, Jermaine Ortiz, Sandor Martin, he's really struggled. He's not lost those fights, although the Sandor Martin fight, some people feel like that Tio should have maybe lost that one. But in the Jermaine Ortiz fight, he won the fight, but he just wasn't as effective as he was against someone like Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor's a completely different style of fighter. He comes at you, he's more flat-footed, he puts the pressure on. That suits Tio's style right down to a T. He's very good at pot shotting and counter punching a guy who's in front of him, even like an Arnold Barboza, who's not really a mover, not giving him a lot of feints, being right there in front of him. That's where Teofimo Lopez has most of his success. And now he's fighting a guy like Shakur Stevenson, who moves around the ring a lot. Shakur is in some of his fights has been so excessive in his movements that fans call him a runner. I think when I'm thinking about these two fighters, Teofimo is the more explosive of the two, the more athletic of the two, but Shakur is the technically better, has the better punch placement. Neither of these guys are volume punchers, and usually in boxing, when you have two counter punchers essentially who are low volume, the more accurate, technically better fighter wins. Not always, but in most instances, and that's probably also what's influencing my prediction here. It's hard to really grasp onto anything where I can envision a way that Tio wins this fight. Because Shakur's a southpaw, and Tio, in my opinion, in this fight is going to have to be the aggressor. And we've seen he's not very good as being the aggressor. And something that I've mentioned in a few of my other videos is when you have a pressure fighter fighting a guy who's moving, if both fighters are of opposite stance, the guy who's boxing has the advantage over the pressure fighter. It's just a lot more harder for these pressure fighters to land up their power shots against an opposite handed fighter. So yeah, I think Shakur Stevenson will take this fight. I did watch the face-off, and one thing that was interesting in that face-off was when Tio said, he kind of basically said that he's not afraid of, being in the grey areas of boxing rules in this fight, which obviously we can take as him basically saying that he might make this fight a bit ugly and a bit rough. And to be honest with you, I actually quite like that, because I think in a clean fight, I'm not sure how Teofimo would win. But if he's going to try to use his size, because remember, he is the bigger guy. That is one thing. I remember Shakur Stevenson is moving up. So that is probably the biggest advantage that Tio has. I think Shakur, in most other aspects, I think his footwork's better. I think he's technically better. I think he's a sharper puncher. I think he's a more accurate puncher. Punching power, okay, we can give that to Tio, but who's Tio knocked out lately? Since Tio's gone up to 140, his power has been nowhere near what it was at 135. He was knocking guys like Richard Comey out. Had Lomachenko very tentative. And I do want to talk about the Lomachenko fight because a lot of people who are picking Tio in this fight are doing it based off the Josh Taylor and Lomachenko fights. For the Josh Taylor fight, for me, he's a completely different style of fighter to Shakur Stevenson. So I can't use that as a reason to why he beats Shakur. And also, Taylor basically was coming off a loss. In my opinion, he lost to Jack Catterall. Got beat up, really, in his hometown. And now we've seen the trajectory of Josh Taylor's career after the Teofimo fight and even before it. I think he was not the same fighter who was in the World Boxing Super Series and winning the undisputed title. I think he was in so many tough fights, Josh Taylor, that it just took so much out of him that I think he only ended up having 25 fights, Josh Taylor. But anyway, point being, I don't think you can go off that as to why he'd beat Shakur. Shakur, to me, is a much better boxer than Taylor. Not as big as Taylor, although Taylor may have been struggling to make the weight at the time. But then when we look at the Lomachenko fight, when you look back at the punch stats of that fight, which are online by CompuBox, Lomachenko hardly threw any punches in the first 6 rounds. Now, the counter argument that, Tio fans or people who think Tio will win this fight are saying that's because Tio didn't let him. I don't know if I agree with that, if I'm being honest. Because between round 7 to 11, I gave Lomachenko every round. He actually turned it up on Tio and was actually winning rounds in the second half. And then I think Tio came back and won the 12th. So I had it 7-5 to Tio. But those first few rounds, I just think, I don't know what it was. There was the shoulder injury apparently with Lomachenko. He saw his good friend Richard Comey get knocked out in the first round. Was he just overthinking it? Was he just too tentative? I tend to lean more towards that than him not throwing punches in the first 6 rounds because Tio just didn't let him. I remember Tio isn't as feared of a puncher at 140 as he is at 135. Now, Shakur is moving up from 135, so will a smaller 135 pounder maybe be intimidated by Teofimo Lopez? And if that's the case, then maybe he can kind of do what he did with Lomachenko. Who knows? I don't see it. I'm going with Shakur Stevenson by decision. I think he's too sharp for Tio. I think he's too quick-minded. I think his footwork, if he wants to make this a boring fight, I think he can. And to be honest, this may be a boring fight. I mean, I'd be interested to see how Teofimo makes this a physical fight, as he was suggesting in the face-off. Maybe he can. And, that's an interesting thing, because I haven't actually thought about it like that. We haven't actually really seen anyone do that to Shakur Stevenson. All of the guys he's fought at super featherweight and lightweight haven't been quite big enough to do that. Now he's stepping up with weight. He is fighting a guy who is naturally bigger than him in Teofimo Lopez. Although that fighter is not a pressure fighter, This isn't like a Pitbull Cruz or a Marcus Maidana. And if he can do kind of what Maidana did to Mayweather in the first fight, that'd be very interesting. But my problem with that is Teofimo Lopez fights nothing like that. He isn't a high volume puncher. He isn't a mauler swarmer. He's going to get on the inside and rough Shakur Stevenson up. So maybe he shows his versatility, because we've never seen Tio fight like that. And I think if he tries to box him, I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm drinking the Shakur Stevenson Kool-Aid a bit too much. But yeah, I think Shakur's going to win 8-4, 9-3. I think the judges' scorecards, I think they'll be like that. I think it can be a very boring fight, though. You've got 2 counter punches here. probably going to wake up because here in the UK the fight's on at 4, but I think it's going to be one of those fights where I'm like, why on earth did I stay up for that? It was an absolutely snooze fest of a fight. It might actually put me back to sleep, but I don't know. I'm still intrigued by it. These are two top level fighters. Shakur is moving up to a fourth weight division. He picked up a ominous title at featherweight, and then he had a pretty decent run at super featherweight, and obviously at lightweight he had a little bit of a run, and now he's going into his fourth weight class. So, and this would really cement Shakur Stevenson amongst those top pound for pound fighters. I'm gonna have to watch these two previous fights again just to kind of refresh my memory. But I'm pretty confident in this pick. I think Shakur's going to do it. I don't think T.O. is going to be able to change his style at this stage in his career. But I've been wrong before. And, I can be wrong again. And that's part of the reason why I'll be tuning into this fight. So, yeah, just let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Maybe you see it completely differently. Maybe you think that Teofimo Lopez is, with his size, with his power, and really with his pedigree, because he is the best guy that Shakur Stevenson's faced. Maybe the boxing fraternity and the boxing hardcores, maybe we've watched one too many, propaganda Shakur videos by the likes of Andre Ward and Terence Crawford, and maybe we're all wrong, and maybe T.O. comes out and pulls off the upset. We shall see on January the 31st. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please subscribe. Please like. I know this channel hasn't really taken off yet, but I'm going to stay committed to it and just see where it goes.